Repeat after me. ADHD does not exist. I repeat, ADHD does not exist. When I say it, you guys don't take me seriously. But here's an article summary from Dr. Richard Saul, who I just bought the book of called ADHD Does Not Exist. You guys should check out this article on Time Magazine, link in the description below. So I wanted to summarize it for you guys because it's some of the points that I brought up in other videos. And I hope you guys are listening and you're going to stop taking these meds and going to start taking care of your underlying problem. So here's a few of his main points that I thought was really interesting. So one, increase in ADHD medication. So from 2008 to 2012, there was a 53% increase in adults taking ADHD medication. That's insane. Like I said, in 2012 alone, 116,000 people admitted themselves to rehab due to Adderall, and that's not including metheds that started off with Adderall. Second point that he's making, overdiagnosis concerns. So Dr. Sauls observes a significant rise in ADHD diagnosis over his 50-year career, especially in the last decade, suggesting overdiagnosis. Now, here's the thing that gets really interesting. Simplistic diagnosis, right? The term ADHD reflecting symptoms of inattention and hyperactivity in the DSM-5 leads to its overuse as a diagnosis, simplifying complex issues, okay? So basically, Dr. Saul argues that the definition of ADHD by the DSM-5 is completely outdated, overly broad, potentially applying to the entire population. You could basically, the whole country has some of these symptoms. It's simple. It's things that are simple as like unable to sit quietly on the desk, not, fidgeting. Like it's basic shit like that. It could apply to anyone, right? So he critiques the current definition, which is obvious. I recommend you guys check out my video on that. Historical perspective. ADHD treatment began with stimulants in 1937 and has remained largely unchanged despite advancements in neuroscience. That's also kind of alarming that we haven't changed anything on the amphetamine arena. So subjective diagnosis criteria. Again, this is back to DSM. The DSM-5 criteria for ADHD are subjective and inclusive, potentially labeling normal human behaviors as ADHD, right? Dr. Salz identifies over 20 conditions that mimic ADHD symptoms, suggesting that these should be individually treated and rather than labeled as ADHD, right? So who knows what's causing whatever those behavior issues that you have, right? It could be, who knows, you don't have this genetic disease called ADHD. Stimulant concerns. So this is, of course, my biggest concern. This whole channel is dedicated to this. I want everyone to quit and not use Adderall. Stimulant concerns. While acknowledging that stimulants can reduce core ADHD symptoms, he raises concerns about their side effects and addictive properties. Again, you got to be crazy to not notice how bad this country is in terms of addiction rates. Like I mentioned this before on how many people admit themselves for Adderall addiction. I'm not even talking about the people who don't admit themselves, who potentially die from overdoses, who potentially like ruin their lives completely, which I've met dozens of people. It's a massive like risk for this country. And I get it. Some of you are like so defensive of your drug. I get so much criticism. It's like, yeah, of course, if you might be in the honeymoon phase, right? The drug is not that bad. Like if you asked me my first year of using Adderall, what Adderall is, I literally thought it was like manna from heaven. It like came from the gods or something. It like did unbelievable for me the first year. But it's really when you start getting into the second, third, fourth year, that's when things start to get significantly scary, like losing sleep, etc., anxiety, depression, you name it, right? So here's another one, another point in the article, lifestyle recommendations. A lot of these symptoms could go away with good diet, exercise, sleeping well, finding meaningful activities that you actually enjoy, like a better job or whatever, or better thing in life that you do. A lot of these things have gone away with me with having those basics. Another point here in this article is differentiating patients. So he categorizes patients into these exhibiting normal levels of distraction and those with underlying conditions require specific treatment. So again, everyone has normal levels of distraction. It's just and the ones that are intense is probably some other underlying condition, not this ADHD disease thing that we're talking about. So him and Dr. Gabor, another doctor, I'm glad that these people exist. I'm glad that they're writing books about this subject. He's also calling to rethink ADHD. He advocates for reevaluating the ADHD understanding, focusing on accurate diagnosis and appropriate treatment. I really, really hope their arguments win, because you guys are really hurting yourself if you're in therapy, taking Adderall, taking any amphetamine, and going through the track of dealing with those symptoms, because you're dealing with the symptoms instead of dealing with the underlying issues, which is feels amazing when you do. That's what I've done, and I feel amazing ever since. I hope you guys do too.